You're listening to a 3CR podcast created in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.
Sabah al-khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yousef Ahmed Alreemawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Palestine Remembered. We wake up to some enthusiasm. When I say enthusiasm, I'm sick of reporting the carnage, although we can't move away from that space. When we're talking about Palestine and this ongoing genocide, we applaud and thank David Shoebridge and the Greens for uncovering yet another $1.2 million in defence contracts that were exported in February. I mean, the complicity just continues, and it's heartbreaking that the lies keep coming out of Canberra and how they hide behind definitions of what is a weapon. If you are contributing at all in this genocide, you are complicit. But I want to speak about what's happening with the youth. I know most of last year and the year before, the crew at APAN and I have been working as hard as we could to ensure this spurious definition of anti-Semitism, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, wouldn't take hold in tertiary institutions. Now, sadly, it did. Not in everywhere. We were able to stop many of them. We were not able to stop it at Melbourne University. They adopted the IHRA, including the working examples, even as problematic as they are. They immediately released a statement straight after adopting the IHRA and said, but don't worry, we're going to develop an Islamophobia definition as well. So we wrote back to the VC and said, Palestinians, the most famous Palestinian is Christian, right? Jesus, he was Christian. Some Palestinians aren't Muslim. They could be Druze, they could be Christian, Samaritans. They might even be atheists. Now, that letter has remained unanswered. But to the great, uplifting, one of the challenges of getting through this genocide is seeking joy where we can. Uni Melbourne 4PAL in Melbourne and the team in Sydney University have set up encampments, exactly as happened in Colombia and now all over the US, in Egypt, in France, in Italy, and I expect many more places in the coming days. They've set up encampments in solidarity with Gaza, demanding that the universities divest, demanding that the universities end any scholarship with any universities in Israel that are complicit, to end their contracts with any war profiteers, to divest any uni funds from companies that are supporting the genocide, to protect Palestinians from anti-Palestinian racism, to protect their supporters from anti-Palestinian racism, to condemn, it shouldn't be too hard for this, to get VCs to condemn Israel's scholasticide. It's a new word that I learned from my dear friend Geordie Silverstein. The thing about this genocide is we've learned so many different words, WCNSF, wounded child, no surviving family. Scholasticide is when the entire education system has been decimated. It shouldn't be too hard for somebody who's in charge of education to say, I condemn the destruction of an entire schooling system. I got a WhatsApp from a student in Gaza. Said, I was in my final year. I'll never be able to complete my degree. But can you send a message of solidarity to the crew at Melbourne University and let them know that it means the world to us that they're standing there in solidarity with us. In one of the meetings I had with a VC, he was talking about student activism in, a very capitalistic, high-handed white male sort of space. I said, if you went through all of the student protests and go back your lifetime, whether it be Vietnam, whether it be about equal opportunity, whether it be about access to education, whether it be about Iraq, Afghanistan, and today Palestine, I'd like you to tell me when the students were wrong. When have the students been wrong? And he couldn't. He was dumbfounded. And what we've got now is a situation, and if you have a look at, particularly in the US, what's happening there with respect to the violence we're seeing at these encampments, is that we've got this rage about the safety, quote unquote, of Zionists and the anti-Semitism, the explosion on campuses. We're more mad, Western media, Western power, is more mad about quote-unquote safety of Zionists, quote-unquote violence of protesters, than they are about a genocide. But this fits into a pattern. It fits into the pattern that is every time something bad happens, Israel concocts a diversion. At least 3 mass grave sites have been covered. Up to 1,500 people, kids, zip-tied with their hands behind their backs, being dug out of mass graves. Nobody's talking about the mass graves. All we're talking about is college campuses and sensitive feelings of Jewish students and how they might feel, or Zionist students. And in fact, if you look at all of the protests in the States, the overwhelming majority of crew that's getting arrested are American Jews. They're using their privilege, putting themselves at the front line to defend their Palestinian and Muslim siblings. And good on them. That's what solidarity looks like. This concept of putting yourself in harm's way to protect others, that's what we're supposed to do. We're going to play a recording of Yousef Ahmed Alreemawi's event. He's got a couple of events. He's got one actually tomorrow night. So if you get a chance to get along, it's called Understanding Palestine, the British Mandate. It's number 4. There'll be a link for it in the podcast. Look it up. But it's at 235 St. George's Road in Melbourne, 235 St. George's Road in Melbourne. If you go to Yousef's Facebook page, you'll be able to book for that. We've got a clip coming up. Make sure you get along to the rally tomorrow. Our dear friend Giselle will be speaking. So thanks for listening. Share the podcast and tell your friends.
May Day 2024. No more imperialist wars. Workers' solidarity against colonialism. Australian imperialism is a cornerstone to the exploitation and oppression of the global south. From First Nations lands here to the Congo, from Mapuche lands to Palestine. Join the Black People's Union, Latin American Solidarity Network, Renegade Activists, Australian Asia Worker Links, and others in the struggle against Western imperialism. Wednesday, 1st of May, 5 p.m. at the State Library of Victoria. Supported by Community Radio 3CR.
Hi, this is Rafif Ziada, and you're listening to 3CR, pro-Palestinian, happily proud radio.
When I want to talk about identity, I want to give you some flashes. And then I will leave it up to your imagination and interpreting. The first one is a story in Safad, Palestine, 1925. A man called Ibrahim al-Husari, Hajj Ibrahim al-Husari, decided to have a second wife because his only son was killed in World War I. And he was convinced that maybe if you have another son, then somebody will help you in the business and maybe inherit the business that you have. Maybe he didn't need much convincing. He was like, okay, I'll do that for you. In Arabic we say عنده تلفين الخاطر يعني. So the first baby girl, the first newly born was a girl, and he chose Arabiya to be her name. Arabiya is the Arabic word for the Arab. In this case, ta marbuta, feminine. The Arab one, the Arab woman, the Arab girl. Arabiya. This little girl is the mother of my father. Is my grandfather. Was born in 1925. And then we have to ask the question, why did Hajj Ibrahim chose this name to call or to name his baby girl after this? And it's a reflection of the spirit that swept the Arab world towards the end of World War I, towards the end of a long empire. And now they felt that the rise of national identity in Europe, in the world. So you have empires, you have the Ottoman Empire, the Hungarian Austrian Empire, the British Empire, the French Empire, the Russian Empire, but under every empire, what do we have? Nations. And every nation has developed its national identity in response or trying to seek independence. And that was an international atmosphere. So the Arabs, in response to this, started to develop their national identity towards the end of the 19th century. So the Arabs in Palestine felt that finally we are ready for statehood. Finally we are ready for independence, and we want to be united with our Arabic-speaking brothers and sisters in the Arab world. So what was on the table back then was a political entity in Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, and what was called the Kingdom of Arab Syria, Al-Mamlaka Al-Arabiyya Al-Suriya, and that was in 1920. So, yes, let it be. We can't be united with all Arabs from the Gulf to the ocean, but we can be united with the Levantine Arabs. So let that be. So the Palestinians accepted to be part of Greater Syria Kingdom. Be careful that when we talk Syria, we were not talking about Syria as we know it today. We talk about Syria as what was called the Levantine or Greater Syria, in which Palestine was the southern part of. Yeah. So this is the first flash. The second flash in 1958. My father was 12 years old. And in a refugee camp near Jericho, inside Palestine, for the internally displaced Palestinians who were kicked out their homes in 1948, including my father's family, every morning they were chanting the Algerian national anthem. The Algerian national anthem. A bit weird? Why? Because the Algerian Revolution broke out in 1957, after 130 years of colonization at the hands of the French, which is very brutal colonization. In 1957, the War of Independence, which was a national project among all Algerians, it took them 7 years after the beginning of that War of Independence on the colonization to triumph. And that has inspired all Palestinians. So if Algerians can do it, we will do it. If they have done it in a war, in a form of guerrilla warfare, we should do that. And then the Palestinians have embraced it in many, many, many ways, including the Palestinian kids chanting the Algerian national anthem in Palestine every morning. That's another flash. Now, the third one is in maybe 1962 in Akka and Haifa. And back then, Israel was 16, 18, 17 years old. And what did Israel do to the Arab minority? What some of the Zionists call the unfinished job. Meaning that we have started ethnic cleansing of all Palestinians in 1948. We should have finished all that, and we shouldn't have left 130,000 Arabs to be in what later became Israel. So how did Israel deal with this with this Arab minority in the newly born state of Jewish majority? They put them under military law, so they were not like the Jewish Israelis, where Jewish Israelis where they lived in a civil society where there is democracy. But when it comes to the Arabs, they were under military law. So if they have to restricting their freedom of movement, restricting their freedom of education or publications in Arabic, or and also confiscating their properties to continue the ethnic cleansing. And today marks the 48th year of what we call the Land Day, Yawm al-Ard. Anyone has heard of the Land Day in the Palestinian calendar? It started in 1976 with events inside what today's Israel, and it's confiscating Arab land and giving it to the settlers, and that led to protests which was faced with brutality and which led to more killing, and then it became a day where we stick to the land, where we remember the land. We call it Yawm al-Ard. And today, in fact yesterday, the 30th of March, marked the 48th anniversary of Yawm al-Ard. And sadly, this could be the worst anniversary since 1976 with what we have been witnessing in Gaza. One of the sad posts I saw on Facebook was a person in Gaza, and they said, we Gazans remember and commemorate the Land Day with bleeding more humans out of Gaza and with having more lands stolen by the Israelis. So this year could be the very worst ever anniversary of the Land Day that we have witnessed since 1976. So back to this 1962, there was a consensus where in Israel they want to determine the population, to know the figures. And then there was something written in Arabic given to the minority. And you have to tick a box. What are you? Who are you? And then Muslim, Greek Orthodox, Greek Catholic, Catholic non-Greek, Druze, others. And then came the question, what about Arabs? Why not Arab? There was a war on being Arab. There was an Israeli decision to strip the Arab population of what later became Israel of their Arab identity, and they dropped it from their forms. And the response was the young poet Mahmoud Darwish, who I spoke about. I will always mention Darwish in every topic, so this is a warning. Darwish wrote in 1964 سجل أنا عربي, a conversation between him and the governor. Write down, put it on your record, أنا عربي, I am an Arab. So this very famous, could be the most popular poem by Mahmoud Darwish, was born in the context of anti-Arab identity inside the newly born state of Israel. So that's another flash. The fourth one, in 1967, after the occupation of what remained of Palestine, which is West Bank, Jerusalem, Gaza, and also Sinai, and also the Golan Heights. 6-day war, complete defeat. Now, with all the shock and sadness and anger among the Palestinians and all Arabs in that time, the Palestinian minority in Israel had the opportunity to be united with their families in the West Bank, because now West Bank is under the same occupation. So for the first time, they get to meet their brothers and sisters and uncles and aunties after 20 years since Nakba. For the first time, they were able to go to Ramallah and Nablus and Jenin and Tulkarem and Al-Quds and Al-Khalil and the rest of West Bank. For the first time, and I want to quote a Palestinian writer called Sulaiman al-Natur, where he said, the moment I went to Al-Quds after the occupation of Al-Quds, I went to the bookstores. I wanted to see the newspapers in Arabic. I saw the Egyptian newspapers, Al-Ahram, Al-Akhbar, Al-Jumhuriyah. I saw the magazines, and I saw the Kuwaiti publication Al-Arabi magazine, very renowned monthly edition. And I started hearing street vendors calling for fruit and vegetable in Arabic language. And I started hearing people, maybe fighting in Arabic and taxi and, this kind of ambient noise in Arabic. And to me, it felt like I am embracing the Arab world. I am embracing the Arab world. وكأنني أحتضن العالم العربي. But also, because of this connection to the Arab world, the frustration is also very high when we don't see them on times like this. So the simple question, وين العرب? Where are the Arabs? Is the same question that I heard myself, and also I have read, I have seen footage in Nakba, in Naksa, in First Intifada, in Second Intifada, and in today's genocide in Gaza. Where are the Arabs? This connection does not come without a price. I mean, we are connected to the Arab world. We are connected to the Arab people. But when we need them, we can't, especially in times like this. So it's a very valid question, where are the Arabs? However, this frustration, this anger is directed to the official or to the governments or to the leaders of the Arab world, and is not directed to the people, because we know the people of the Arab countries are with us. It goes without saying, even though that we now live in time of what I call moral apostasy. Come on, I'm proud of this of this term, because the moral apostasy, the apostates, the Arabs who should be supporter of the Palestinian cause, and by normalizing, isn't that an apostasy? We live in time where there are now stream in the Arab world trying to promote normalization at the expense of, imagine if you are promoting normalization in a country, in Arabic language, to the Arabic constituency. So how do you do that? You have to blame it on Palestinians, to justify normalization. And you will start saying, well, the Palestinians sold out their lands. The Palestinians missed every opportunity, trying to repeat and regurgitate the Zionist propaganda when it comes to the Palestinian narrative on Nakba. And now we started reading that in Arabic language, which is weird. So even though this is now happening in the Arab world, but the general atmosphere among Arabs is supportive of Palestine and will always be. So where is the Arabs is a very valid question, and it is stemming out of what? Frustration, sadness, and anger, because the expectation is very, very high. And I want to share a message that I received last week from a Palestinian in Australia who knows that I am also a lover of Arabic language. And she said, Yousef, can we call it the Palestinian language? I don't feel comfortable calling it Arabic language. She might be sarcastic, she might not, but they feel, I don't want to be affiliated anymore with the word Arab as a response to this frustration. Sad, disappointing, yes. Sarcastic, joking, maybe. But even though it's scary, because after all these centuries long of connection to the Arab world, and all we see is disappointment, that could be the context. I won't say more. And the last thing is, the last flash I will share with you is now back to the Sajjil Ana Arabi. Sajjil Ana Arabi, the poem by Mahmoud Darwish of 1964 in response to dropping Arab from the phones. Now there are people on Facebook who say, Sajjil Ana Mish Arabi. Write down, I'm not an Arab. Sad. But look, this maybe they are not sincere. And I'm sure they will change their mind when things happen. But we have come to this point. And again, these things, I just share with you what I observe and what I have seen.
That was Yousef in his series of educational lectures called Understanding Palestine. Number 4 in the series of 10 is called Understanding Palestine, the British Mandate, the Nakba before the Nakba. And it will be held at Black Spark Cultural Centre, 235A, St George's Road, Melbourne. It's very, very important for us as activists that are engaged in Palestine to use our knowledge to engage with our friends, family, peers and networks. So use that knowledge, tell your friends, and it's so important to speak up in places where Palestinians don't have access. So it might be your workplace, it might be your church, it might be your union, but never before has the appetite for knowledge on Palestine been more voracious. There isn't anyone that I speak to, I'm constantly in a Palestine t-shirt or jumper wearing a keffiyeh, where people aren't looking at me and smiling and nodding, where I aren't asked for some more information. I did a fundraiser with the Bundara Greens on Monday night, packed house, raised almost $10,000 from a whole segment of the community that had never engaged on Palestine. So if you are conversationalist in Palestine, you've got enough knowledge to know, speak to those people, because people like myself rarely get a chance to speak to people who are not quite there yet. So use that power and that knowledge. Get along and support the Avaroa Centre. Make sure you come along to the rally tomorrow. Giselle will be speaking. She's a headline act. Come up and say hello. I'll be standing next to the statue with my family carrying a flag. So thanks for listening. Share the podcast. Tell your friends. And remember, there's never been a better time for a free Palestine.
Because the Palestinian fight isn't just the Palestinians' fight, it's all our fight, because it's a fight not just about land, it's about a fight for freedom.
Everybody should be standing here today saying free Palestine.
Solidarity with our Palestinian brothers and sisters on behalf of the Gumbaynja Nation, my people who've never ceded their sovereignty.
We should be recognising Palestine as a state and recognising the rights of Palestinians.
3CR. Stay tuned, stay radical.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast produced in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.